Welcome back, Algebra 1. We are here with Unit 2 once again. We're on Level 2. In the last one, we added and subtracted with equations. Now we're going to go ahead and multiply and divide. So our skills are very similar to last time. This time we're balancing equations through multiplication and division. And then second, we're going to do more math notation from written statements. So again, using the English language and converting that into math language, okay? And the only vocab we have today are product and quotient. Some of you guys already know what that is, but if not, we're definitely going to go over it, all right? So our first skill. Let's start off with that old, like a new puzzle. So in the last video, we had like x minus 2 equals 6. This time, let's see it with multiplication, right? So now I have 6 times x equals 30. 6 times something equals 30. So anytime you see something like 6x and the constant and the variable are just hanging out by each other, 6 times x can be written just like this. And that's how we're going to use it throughout the rest of the year. Okay? So I can rewrite this as 6x equals 30. And in the last lesson, we learned the essence of Algebra 1, which is finding what we need to remove and then doing the opposite to both sides in order to remove that from the variable, okay? We want to get this variable by itself, so I got to get rid of this 6 somehow. And how I do that? I do the opposite of 6 times x. Well, what is the opposite of multiplying by 6? Well, the opposite of that is to simply divide by 6. We're going to divide both sides by 6 in this case. So if I do that, I take my 6x, I divide it by 6, dividing the whole thing by 6, and I'm going to do it again to this side. What I do to one thing, I have to do to the other. Now what's going to happen is, your 6's, if you have 6 divided by 6, well, that just cancels out to 1. So we'd have 1 times x, 1 times x equals x, right? Anything times 1 is itself. So when this goes to 1, we're just left with x equals 30 divided by 6, which is 5. Okay? And that's it. That's really the main idea. Let's see it again. Let's see it with a different variable this time. So instead of x, we're going to use y this time. So we're going to actually solve 3y equals 60. So again, the opposite of multiplying by 3 is to divide by 3. We're going to divide both sides by 3. Again, the 3's cancel out to 1. And I wrote that to the side here. And now we do 60 divided by 3. I have to do it to the other side as well. So the opposite is divide by 3, as I've stated. And we get y equals 60 divided by 3, which is 20. And we have solved the equation just like that. Now let's see if I do something like this. What if I have negative 8x equals 16? Now I have a negative sign in there. And it does matter. Well, again, the opposite of multiplying by negative 8 is to divide by negative 8. We still have to keep the negative sign. This is its own number, okay? And if I do that, the negative 8's, they still cancel out. They cancel out to positive 1 this time. So you got still positive 1 times your x, which equals x. So we're still left with just x. But I'm doing 16 divided by negative 8. And a positive divided by a negative is going to give me a negative answer. Okay? So that's very critical. If you forget your negative sign, well, you're not going to solve the problem correctly. All right? So here's some multiplication signs. And these also apply to division. Also apply to division. And let's run through those real quick, all right? So if you have a negative times a negative, you're going to get a positive. Likewise, it applies to division. So if I have a negative divided by, if I divide by a negative, I still get a positive out of it. And you saw that with the negative 8's canceling. But I can also do this. What if I have a negative times a positive? Or a positive times a negative? You're going to get a negative answer. Same thing with division. Same thing with division. A negative divided by a positive is going to give you a negative. And you can actually flip the order of the negative and positive. So if the positive's here, the negative's here now, it doesn't matter. You're still going to get a negative. Okay? That's very critical. And if we don't watch our signs, again, we're just going to get the wrong answer, and that's no good. So now I want you to try using your signs too, if you need to. I want you to try 12x equals 96. Think back to these problems. What are we going to do to both sides? And go. All right, we're back. So if we're looking at this guy, again, we're multiplying 12 by x. So the opposite of multiplying by 12 is dividing by 12. And what I do to one side, I do to the other. I hope that gets old and you just keep thinking about that, right? If you wake up from a fever dream and you're like, oh my God, do it to both sides. That's good. That's good. You're learning math. That's awesome. So these 12s, again, they're going to cancel out to 1. And so now I'm left with x equals 96 divided by 12. That's one of your multiplication facts. But if you don't remember, 96 divided by 12 is just going to give you 8. How can I check? How do I know that's the right answer? I mean, we did the math right, but how do I do that? Well, you can take this number, x equals 8, and you can plug 8 back in for x. So that means if you do 12 times 8, are you going to get 96 back? And if you plug it into your calculator, you should get 96 out of this. And then that's how you know you've done it right. You can actually do that with all of these problems. You can even do it with adding and subtracting, all right? What about division, though? Okay, so we are on multiplication, but we also need to talk about division. Well, we just showed you, kind of with multiplication, if I'm multiplying things, well, I can divide both sides. I can do the opposite. So the opposite is going to be, it's going to end up being multiplying by whatever you're dividing by. But let's break that down and see that. So first of all, x divided by 4 equals 7. You're not going to see x divided by 4. You're going to see it as a fraction, which is why we worked with fractions so much in the beginning. X divided by 4. The order matters here. If 4 was up here and x was here, it would be 4 divided by x. All right? So I can rewrite x divided by 4 equals 7 as x divided by 4 equals 7. And what's the opposite of dividing by 4? It's multiplying by 4. You're going to multiply both sides by 4. If we do that, 4 times this stuff equals 7 times 4. The 4's on this side, they're going to cancel. Kind of like our units in the train tracks when we were doing distance conversions. Because really, 4 can be written as 4 over 1. So if I multiply my fractions, I would get 4x on top. I get 4 on the bottom. And look, I already showed you with division. The 12s can cancel out. The 4s are going to do the same thing. They cancel out to 1. So I'm just left with x on this side equals 7 times 4, which is 28. Okay? And that's how you solve division problems algebraically. All right? Let's see it a little bit more. Okay? Don't expect it to stick right away. But let's see. Okay? So now let's try this guy right here. Let's try number 4. We have now y divided by negative 6 equals negative 6. So the opposite of dividing by negative 6 is multiplying both sides by negative 6. Again, when I do this, these guys are going to cancel out to 1, which is great. And in fact, they cancel out to positive 1 because we're dividing a negative by a negative. So it's positive. So we'd be left with y, and then again, negative 6 times negative 6, that's a positive 36. Now you're seeing how the division's working with the signs. You're seeing how the multiplication's working with the signs. It has to be a positive 36. Okay? Again, you can throw it back in for y, and you can see if it works out. So now I'd like you guys to try. I would like you guys to try number 5 and number 6. So t divided by 8 equals negative 2. And then number 6 is x divided by negative 5 equals 20. And go. All right, we're back. Let's see how we do this. All right, opposite of dividing by 8 is multiplying by 8. I do that to both sides. They cancel out, so I get t equals negative 2 times 8, which is negative 60. Same thing here, right? Now, opposite of dividing by negative 5 is multiplying by negative 5. Do it to both sides. These cancel on the left. I'm left with x equals 20 times negative 5. That is negative 100, a positive times a negative. There we go. All right, so now let's see how it's going to look with words. How can we actually use words and make math expressions that are multiplication and division? Okay, so let's see what that's going to be. So again, we have some key words. We have some key words and meanings for our skill 2. Okay, so here's multiplication, here's division. So if you see the product or of or times, that's going to mean multiplication. Division is the quotient, the amount of times something goes into something, right? That's really what division is. Or if you, of course, see divide, probably good idea to divide. And then let's talk about product and quotient. If the sum is the result you get after adding, then the product is the result you get after multiplication. Same thing with the quotient. Quotient's just the result you get from division. So you might see the quotient between 3 and x. So you do 3 divided by x, and then whatever that is. Let's see an example of this. All right, the amount of times 3 can go into a number x is 18. All right, so the order's kind of weird here, so we have to really wrap our brain around it. So I'm saying the amount of times 3 can go into, so that means division. The amount of times 3 can go into a number x is 18. So if I asked you, all right, how many times does 3 go into 6? You're going to tell me 2. And so how you would set that up, the amount of times 3 can go into 6, the amount of times 3 can go into 6 is going to be 2 times. 6 divided by 3 is 2. Right? Let's bring it here now. The amount of times 3 can go into a number x is 18. So again, the order matters. Whatever I'm saying first in this case, the amount of times 3 can go into a number x, I'm going to write it as this. X divided by 3. The amount of times 3 can go into x. Kind of weird, right? But it's really this idea of building that connection. And then is equals 18. There we go. So that's how you get that guy right there. That one's kind of weird. The other ones, usually the order is fine, but this time we kind of had to do a switcheroo, right? The 3 actually came on the bottom this time. So kind of, again, reason your way through that. Let's see it with a couple more examples, right? So let's try this one. Form a math equation given the product of 8 and a number b is 25. Product. We know that's going to be multiply. It actually says product of, so it's like multiply, multiply. You're definitely multiplying. Of 8 and a number v, so we write that algebraically like this, is means equals 25. There we go. We're done. We don't actually have to solve it, but if we wanted to, you would divide both sides by 8. Okay. Let's see number 8. Speaking of 8, 23 of a number x is 108. Of means multiply. Okay, so we're multiplying again. So 23 times x is 108. Is again means equal. Okay, and we are done. All right. Does this order matter? Does that guy matter? I know division mattered. Does this one matter? And actually, for multiplication, it does not. Because if you do x times 23 like this, it's kind of a gross way to write it. Technically, that's still correct. But try to get in the habit of writing your constant in front of your variable, like this. Constants in front of the variable from left to right. Okay? That's just standard math etiquette. So now I want you guys to try these two. I want you to form a math equation for number 9 and 10. Number 9, the amount of times a number y goes into 20 is 100. And then number 10, the product of negative 3 and a number w is 99. And go. Alright, we're back. So, the amount of times a number y goes into 20 is 100. This is just like that purple writing example I gave you. Let's break it down. The amount of times a number y goes into 20 is 100. The amount of times that 3 goes into 6. The amount of times that a number y goes into 20 is 100. Our y is actually on the bottom this time. And don't worry, we don't need to solve this guy. We're actually not there yet. Okay? This is different than y over 20. 20 over y is a little harder to solve. Okay? Let's look at number 10 though. The product, I'm multiplying, alright, of negative 3 and a number w. Negative 3 times w equals, because is, 99. Alright, and your homework is going to be pretty much what we just did with the examples. So, look over the notes, rewatch the video if you need to, and this is Mr. Knight signing out. Have an awesome day. And weekend. It's Thursday.